Yes, please.
Yes, welcome everybody, and thanks for being here. This is our first meeting of a row of workshop. This is supposed to be the more general or framework workshop dealing with energy planning. Then we will go into details in several topics, and we will do our best to bring valuable information that can share with you. But as it is evident also from today, I think we will get a lot of feedback and also information back to us and to the consortium, to our project. So a double thank for this. Thank you very much, Manfred, for setting up this agenda in a very strict time. And today, okay, I just can spend one word about the agenda, but roughly because we are having this first presentation by Manfred introducing the topic, and I think he will provide some insight in what we are doing in our project in this field, and then we will have a different presentation from some replicant partners that wanted to bring this to us, and thanks again. And I think the streamline of the presentation will be, in a way, the carbon neutrality, which is nowadays a target for the whole Europe. But I think it's very challenging to think how at member state level, at regional level, and at local level we can bring this concept in reality. And I think this will be the main challenge for us for the next years. And so I think we have some presentations that are approaching this from different perspective, maybe more theoretical, more at the country level, more at local level. So I think it's a good mixture, and I'm very glad to hear from all of you. So I don't want to say much more about this. Thanks again to all, and I don't know. I give the floor. I don't know if to Zaneta or to Manfred directly.
Yes, I can say a few words if you don't mind. Thank you all for joining us for this session. We will, as you remember, we'll have 6 more of this workshop, each focused on different topic. We include all of your learning needs, all that you provided us, and we hope we will meet your learning needs. And we are hoping to exchange some experience between all of partners. So thank you all for providing us this opportunity, and I hope to hear from you, and I hope to see you at the next workshop also. So let's have a wonderful meeting today.
Okay, thank you, Zaneta. I tried to launch my presentation. Is it visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So let's start off with today's topic, energy planning and energy transition, which is also issued for the Prospect 2030 project, or the main issue. Somehow, okay, I see. We can move on. So I give you an overview shortly. Just a few words on Prospect 2030, then we go to framework conditions, and then we dive directly into our ecosystems, exploring new territory. Then how to structure this new territory with the subtitle Broccoli Romanesco, and structuring the approach for decentralization, transition planning, action as the moving force for vehicles on the pathway. And last but not least, the final question may be answered by a citation of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. So far the outlook. Just a a short overview. So in Prospect 2030, we are 7 regions drafting 7 sustainable energy action plans. The regions are very, very differing, with differing conditions, with differing actors, and with different participants. So finding a method to unify all that is a challenge, as a challenge also for the transition planning. We are assessing the ongoing use of public funds and in the involved regions and long for an improvement in the future of the use of funds. And of course, and here we are in the middle of the pool now, develop training and mutual learning activities. So just a short look on the framework. We all know it. There's nothing much to say to it. It's the European Green Deal and of course the clean energy package for all Europeans, which is giving the main framework. And as a part of the framework, we have also the 2030 targets, 55% reduction of greenhouse gases, renewable energy, energy efficiency, and interconnection of grids. So the challenge of planning the transition of our energy systems towards a low carbon economy through a regional approach is really a challenge. When we started off with Prospect 2030, we were thinking, or I was thinking, we can go straight forward with according to regulations and conditions given in the clean energy package, but very soon we recognize that we are entering really new territory. Although all elements seem very well known, there's a saying which says the fool is not the one who is not knowing, because the fool can still learn. The real fool is the one who thinks he knows everything and doesn't see the pit on his way, and so he falls into the pit. Okay, this is the tension field within. So energy planning within transition towards low carbon economy comprises a series of issues. I'll just line out 3 of them: transformation of the power system, which is elementary; digitalization, which is really new territory and unknown ground; and electrification of end-use sectors, which is also a section. This is a selection of issues as lined out by the International Renewable Energy Agency. So entering new territory means let's take 2 core aspects of the energy transition, which are shift and change. We know that still more than 2/3 of the Union's energy demand is covered by fossils, besides renewables, nuclear, and so on. And shifting from direct combustion to fossils by various measures, as we know them, I won't name them individually, results in a decrease of primary energy input and carbon emissions. That's great, but inevitably leads also to an increase of electricity demand and requiring also an increase in electricity generation. So shifting electricity generation towards renewable sources results, that's great, in a decrease of primary energy input and carbon emissions. Nice. The other core aspect is change. So change the demand structure of consumption by, for example, programs for reducing heat demand and so on, restricting individual mobility and so on, results also in a decrease of primary energy input and carbon emissions. But we have to consider also other impacts. We have emerging new components, which one of them is digitalization, which is estimated to increase the electricity demand within the decade by 20 to 25%. That's a lot. And of course, the enforced electrification of end-use sectors. So all in all, summa summarum, shift and change lead to the expected decrease in primary energy input and carbon emission, and also to the predominance of electric energy. We must be aware of that. So currently we are in transition towards the transition. I have given a comparison here on this slide between the well-known energy development planning. This is the old way, and then the box to the right, energy transition planning. We are now in the middle of it. I just dedicate a few words to the box to the right, because it lines out the main differences to regard in transition planning. We have cross-sectoral strategies, and these are deriving from overall development goals. We have to consider that it's a closed target process. It's not an open target process where impacts are conditional to efforts. Efforts need to be designed for achieving the necessary expected impacts. If we only think on climate change and climate change mitigation, this is understandable. But there's also a great challenge. We do not have benchmarks. And also acceptance is a challenge when we think of arrows of windmills and so on, which are increasingly finding also a position in the countryside. And we have pre-programmed conflicts between technology and environmental protection. That's what I mentioned before. Digitalization is a central aspect, and up to now, we cannot estimate its impact. And as an additional factor, a profound spatial planning is a conditio sine qua non. This means this has to be a core point in energy planning. So here, this is a snapshot of a few fish swimming in the pool where we have to deal with. I won't go deeper into reading all the names here. You just see a bundle or a group of things to consider. Why do I show this? We have to get structure into this new territory of transition planning, of energy planning. And I want to cite an Austrian pioneer in unconventional forestry management, agriculture, and energy engineering, who was long ahead of his time, and Victor Schauberger. He said, take a look at nature, first capture its principle, and then copy it. And this was said in the 50s of the last century. Nevertheless, if you have a look on emerging tendencies, we see that activities, human activities, and this is also energy planning, can be is compared and expressed as an interaction of organisms, and these rely on the concepts of biocybernetics, which is part of ecology and related eco-engineering, and is using also related terminology. And this form of approach has already reached mainstream, especially in information technology and digitalization, which will be a core part of energy transition planning and of the new energy systems, but also increasingly in economics and spatial planning, infrastructure engineering. Also here, this approach has already reached mainstream, and I think it's worth to pursue it because otherwise we won't find an adequate approach to such a vast territory. So if we have a look here, this is a graphic comparing the given energy system. We're living in an energy-driven system predominated based on combustion, with a very strong hierarchic structure, and we are moving or transforming into an energy and data-driven ecosystem. Let's call it ecosystem, because here we have variable arrangements of components. Let's compare them to organisms in a given system, operated, this means interrelated, by a technology, by a mode of dealing, which also is not very known to the current players, which is blockchain operation. We have pilot projects. In Güssing, we are also participating in these types of projects. And also here we have learned to, from the IT partners in IT, to think in ecosystems. And this will really be the future of approaching complex systems as also energy systems. So let's get structured. We have described the approach, the framework, and now we will have a look into our ecosystem. And all actors here are nodes in a sort of neural network of decentralized infrastructure. Sounds complicated, is complicated, but we need to find an approach. So let's remember the last slide. Good structured hierarchic systems, and on the other hand, system always in move with a lot of possible connections, and a new introduced flow of not only energy but also of information, which makes the whole system operable. And if we compare it with the next slide, this is no esoteric Kabbalistic life tree or something like that. This is structure of organisms, let's call them, in the pool, in the ecosystem of energy planning and energy development. I did not enter here energy suppliers, which are also playing a role because we are dealing with planning. And energy suppliers are co-imprised at here in sectoral stakeholders. So we have here organisms, we have components, interacting components within a defined ecosystem, which is defined by relations to each other. And you must imagine that always in movement. So this is a static snapshot. And it's mirroring pretty much also the project consortium in Prospect 2030. We have players on various levels with various conditions. And just to name hierarchically, it's we have overarching territorial authorities providing management framework conditions, providing financial resources, and so on. But we have also connected to these authorities, we have public, semi-public energy agencies. So we have autonomous provinces, we have Bundesländer in Austria, and so on. We have energy agencies. We possibly have also connected funding agencies connected to the authorities. We have research and development, Politecnico di Torino, for example. We have subordinated territorial authorities included, which are sub-regions, or which in ordinary this is attributed to urban or metropolitan spaces, but not exclusively. We have private planning consultation companies which are carrying out the tasks of an energy agency on behalf of subordinated authorities. We have spatial-based associations, municipalities, which arrange to development units, but we can see also as agglomerations and their periphery. And we have local energy agency like we here EEE. We are in the situation that we are owned by such a spatial-based association, 19 municipalities, and we do not have the interface in Burgenland, where we are located, the Bundesland. We do not have the interface of a public or semi-public energy agency. So we have our territorial authority, our overarching one, and then we are connected to subordinated authorities and more or less free flying, comparable to private planning companies. In our case, it's a semi-public status. Okay, getting structured. So all factors or all actors need to be regarded as nodes in this neural network for transition in a sustainable energy supply chain and in the evolving digital economic ecosystem. An ecosystem is a topos, a part of the landscape with individual structures, nevertheless comparable. These ecosystems are comparable and habitated by a group of organisms. So giving structure to our arrangement here of actors, we have a functional approach for energy transition, for energy planning, which is bound to sectors. We have our territorial authority and so on, and in the sectoral stakeholders. Sectoral, we call it a functional approach because it's omnipresent. It's present also in spatial approaches. Here we have green business in the best case, green finance, green mobility, and so on and so on. So we can call this an ecosynosis. This is a convivence of organisms in certain structures. We have a spatial approach, urban development access. This is one of the first approaches also in energy planning. It's easy to find solution for urban spaces because they are similarly structured and are artificial models to, if we drive it to the extreme. Nevertheless, easy to manage and to find solutions. So we have the approach of smart, sustainable cities, for example. Everyone knows that. This is the urban development axis, and we can divide it into urban ecozones. That means places for business, places for industry, places for living, and so on, and ecotopes, which are smaller parts of the mosaic. And we have also the second spatial approach, which was taken up only a few years ago also by the European Union, which is the rural development axis with the approach of smart sustainable village, because digitalization gives us the possibility to develop infrastructure also in rural sites. What a thing that was very, very difficult from the point of view of viability and investments and overall return of efforts. You see, with digitalization, we have the second spatial approach, rural ecozones, which are more complex and not as easy to handle as urban structures, but that's normal because solutions are first found for places and structures which are easier to understand. So if we superimpose our access approach to the decentralized system, we see that we can group them, but that's not enough. We have to understand it deeper. This means energy transition means also transition in planning approaches. And a core question is scalability. Scalability for regions, for macro regions, for micro regions, for local solutions. We have to find a solution focusing on the main method, focusing on the main connecting elements, and finding a way to link these elements independently from size and level. So this is no computer animation. This the picture. What you see is the broccoli varietas romanesco, which is growing in self-similar fractal structures. And I think that's how we need to arrange. It's just for illustrating it. Yeah, it's a good illustration on how to arrange our energy systems and our planning approaches. So how to approach? It's action planning as we have it in Prospect 2030. Still, please take once more a look on the structure, on a snapshot of the moving components in the system, and we can distinguish between macro level planning and micro level planning. So macro level might be European macro regions or whole Europe, or even provinces or Bundesländer of a country. And going down to micro level planning, which can mean also sectors, but also, or mainly because we are in Prospect 2030, we are focusing on region, on small regions, on municipalities or associations of municipalities. Nevertheless, all these actors are involved in various positions. You see, it's not easy to, it's not so easily digestible, but nevertheless, we try to find an approach. And all instances, as we have seen in the graph before, can be considered as nodes in a system, and they are connected through forces, through moving forces. This means forces, sort of nutritional chain. It's information, it's finances, it's level and hierarchy of governance, but it's also the individual power of stakeholders, industry, interest groups, or affected communities. And all these nodes are equipped to a certain extent with specific instrument to carry out their actions under the exertion of efforts, of course, and to achieve desired impacts. Put these activities into a form, respective commitments can be laid down in action plans. That's what's happening. Yes, so an action plan is commonly a policy instrument containing problem description, defining goals, setting priorities, bundling of measures, and so on. So an action plan is developed in a participatory manner and with the involvement of also non-state actors. And by adopting an action plan, the actors publicly express their political will to implement the adopted measures within a certain period of time. And at this occasion, here comes my old friend, Dr. Cynic, and saying, so far nothing new. We have NECPs, we have CFs, we are on regional and local level. So what do you want? Okay, good old friend, we have a challenge. Because we can detect two different types of action plans. Both are action plans. We have the top-down approach, exerted by public authorities and in subsidiary effect by public energy agencies. And these are action on this side is providing framework, removing obstacles, barriers, arranging targets and assigning beneficiary groups and so on. So this is a flow of information, a financial flow, and a flow of regulatory elements from top to down. On the other hand, also an action plan, and it can be called action plan, is the initiative of, for example, local energy agencies, or also private planning or consultation companies in behalf of local authorities, or associations thereof, or sectoral stakeholders, and so on. So action from the other side is identifying potential and targets in place where they are acting according to the existing programs and strategies. So this is the other end, which is using the framework conditions and instrument for action. This means they are building the structures which are intended by the top-down action plan. So if we say the top-down action plan is similar to the stem of the broccoli, the bottom-up action plan is exerting the function of the green photosynthesis. Yes. So these two types, we have to structure it also in two types. We have the public policy instrument, well known, NECPs, CEPs, and so on. And these are instruments used by overarching territorial authority. Overarching means having other structural authorities below them. This doesn't mean that it ends at the regional government or in national government, or it will end in profound. It ends in Brussels and in the Commission and the European Parliament. On the other end, we have the action plan as an application, as a planning instrument. It uses the instruments provided by the top-down architecture. So it's an action plan, but from the opposite point of view. And here we meet a tension field, which we experienced, for example, in our case, in the Güssing case. There is no intermediate public energy agency on Bundesland level, which would more or less can be compared to, in the Italian case, an autonomous region, for example. So we have made worst case experiences, and this is from the macro level to the micro level, is not recognizing the needs. For example, urban thinking in mobility. We had mobility concepts which were based upon urban thinking, stressing public transport in the periphery. Well, we had it, but at the regional level, there was no recognizing of the purpose. So we had public bus lines, and they were costing millions and were not viable because it was too expensive to run public traffic in the periphery, in the very periphery. It can also be blind benchmarking. Oh, windmills everywhere. Okay, we have also wind, but blind benchmarking means putting up windmills in ecological sensible zones, for example. And we have also, and this is marked by, let's say, a black crossing both directions of information, finance, and so on. But we can have also a golden crossing, and this is a synactive, the best case, setting up functional frameworks, not focusing on direct solutions. Let the micro level actors do what they detect as the most promising development, of course, within the framework. So we are in the middle of three core governance principles for decentralization. This is authority, subsidiarity, and autonomy. Authority is for planning and investment security. You need the framework. Subsidiarity means everything that can be carried out on subordinated level should also be managed and executed there. So these are chain links. And this is for efficiency, because the intermediate link knows both sides. And the other principle of decentralization is autonomy, which is a guarantee for acceptance, because the affected groups do not feel put on a chain. Yeah? So the members are having the possibility to choose their pathway, of course, limited by overall framework, but are also fully accountable for the appropriate execution of their decisions. This has proven as a good example in Austria. Here we have the example of the climate and energy model regions. In the red circle, you see our situation in Güssing, in the very far southeast of Austria. This is our situations, and we have over 90 model regions now. This is an example. The authority is, of course, national and European framework, and in the Austrian case, the ministry. So this is a federal instrument. Subsidiary is the National Climate and Energy Fund, which is the only instrument of the government that can access all funding instruments. That's very interesting, and thus has the possibility to drive, to be a driving force in the. Oh, I was too fast. A driving force. So this is subsidiarity, and subsidiarity on this level has two chain links. The one is the department in the Climate and Energy Fund, which is responsible for the climate and energy model regions. And on the autonomy part of organization, we have the climate and model regions, which are associations of at least 2 municipalities. In our case, it's 19 municipalities, which are having the luxury fact to own an own energy agency, which is the Güssing. And the chain link to the superior subsidiary level is CAM manager for the region, which has to be installed as a chain link to the stakeholders, and activities there are based on continuous interaction with stakeholders, and also to report to the authority. So we have a top-down flow of information and framework, and we have a flow back up to the top of information and of effort and success. So I have to hurry up, give you an overview. So this is the normal process of action planning. Priorities, it contains priorities as a commitment. We have measures. Measures are implemented structures, and each measure is linked to a challenge. So its effect, and that's important, can be estimated in a calculable unit or in a relation of impact and effort. And actions, finally, are the precise use of planning instruments, of planning, financial, organization, and so on, instruments, and to put measures into practice. So energy planning is only comparable only on action and instrument level for benchmark, but also for evaluation. And here we can find a scalability. So actions is, we have to standardize the action development process and unify the macro approach and the micro approach. That's the challenge. So we have our instruments. You can see them here in the box. I skip it to keep time. And instruments are ubiquitous in all planning ecosystems. So you might have technical infrastructure, what else? Very differing, but you have everywhere. You have instruments which can be used for actions. And here we are. So nevertheless, they are limited to design and regulatory framework. They can be bundled, and they can be bundled up to the priorities. And they are cross-cutting also. If there's any question, we can go deeper into it in the question and answer session. So how do we achieve this? We have the SWOT. We are weighting internal and external factors influencing measure implementation. We put on the strengths and opportunities side, we put them on the impact axis, and weaknesses and threats on the effort axis. And additionally, in the red circle, we give them a weight. So what is the outcome? It's a picture of the readiness of a region for a measure or vice versa. So actions are defined on the perspective of achieving highest synergy and limiting countering directors' impacts. So far, nothing new. It's a SWOT is carried out as in any planning case. Here, my good old friend, Dr. Sinek. Yes, you're right, Dr. Sinek, but it's still a static SWOT if applied to a single measure. So we can bundle our weighted SWOTs of measures within the respective priorities. Our priorities in the action plans are co-comprising measures, and measures are evaluated for readiness across the SWOT. So if we bundle that, we achieve an impact effort matrix, which can be, which is good for ex-ante evaluation, but also ex-post evaluation, and especially for stakeholder communication. We can have these impact effort matrices and diagrams on individual level for each priority, or synaptic for the whole priority panel, for the whole action plan, and have an impression where we are at. This is a first estimation. So this was the second output, the impact effort matrix. But we have also a third result, which up to now is not carried out, but we can use these bundled weighted SWOTs, and after an evaluation period, reintroduce the results of our measures and of our actions and the use of instruments, and reintroduce our experience with it into the SWOT matrix. So we can evaluate if our scenario was accurate and how we can adjust shortcomings. We can use it for monitoring, and we can use it for benchmarking too. So we can benchmark experience of another region, maybe also on another level of size or GDP or what else, for appropriateness and readiness on our region, on our region where we are planning. So it's can be used for benchmarking, for monitoring, it's excellent, and also for scenario evaluation. So with impact effort modeling, we can cover our ecosystem where we are exerting our planning, because we are cover all possible elements, all possible organisms, all possible structures within our individual ecosystem by distilling the process down to the main connecting elements, which is instruments and action. And thus, it's scalable and connectable to all levels of macro or micro-regional planning, because it's focusing on instruments and the experience with instruments for self-evaluation or other evaluation. So we have in this approach, in our Prospect 2030 approach, comparable structures connecting different levels which are similar in function, but not the same in detail, nevertheless making up the whole. So European energy systems in a vision might look like our broccoli romanesco. It's self-organizing structures, nevertheless all connected to the same stem and to the same flow of energy. Okay, and the final question is, are the targets for transition realistic if we remember 55%? 1 year ago, I would have said yes, but the efforts are big. Now I have to answer with the Hitchhiker's Guide from the Universe, meeting Schrödinger's cat, because last year, spring 2020, introduced the unestimable. We find ourselves in the situation of a cat in the box, exposed to a deadly poison, and the trigger for the poison is connected to a slow decaying radioactive substance. So you don't know, it's unestimable if the cat gets out live or dead. In the same point of view, being in the box for the observer outside, the cat is dead and alive at the same time. So the only chance is to put to have a possibility to take out the cat as soon as possible, because this lowers the probability for negative impact. So the old energy system as we know it is fading inevitably, and it's our cat was on the way to meet friends in the new system during the pre-COVID economy. On the way, the cat fell into the box. Nobody knew what that the box exists. And we are about here now. We do not know how post-COVID economy will look like. Let's hope the best, but the real impacts will be visible after everything is running again. So we are now in the situation that our cat is dead and alive at the same time. We can say it. Hopefully the cat gets out in the new energy system when it's in place and enjoys meeting friends. We really can say if the targets are realistic or if we just have to extend our time frames. So thank you for your attention. Our cat Kitty is leaving now. Any questions, please, afterwards in the question and answer session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Manfred, and it is always nice to hear you. And but let's move on to the next presentation, as I think the speaker have very limited time, and I'm very sorry for that.
Okay, good afternoon to everyone. So I share my screen. As I wrote, I unfortunately have another meeting in a few minutes, so I just have time to introduce our work, but I wrote the link to this presentation, which is public on in the chat, so you can have a look and then if you have question, just contact me. This is a work that we have developed for Italy by comparing some scenarios developed through our methodology with the National Energy Strategy 2030 for Italy. So I said, unfortunately, I have to go very fast. We started from the energy targets at 2030 set by Europe. This is the work that we have developed a year ago. So the value in terms of CO2 emission reduction is not updated now. But anyway, yeah, we started from the, let's say, energy strategy of developing the PNIEC scenario, which is the National Energy and Climate Plan for Italy for 2030. And we wanted to answer different questions, which were, which is the overall cost of the current energy system in Italy and the cost of the future energy system foreseen in the PNIEC 2030 scenario. Are there any other scenarios with higher CO2 emissions abatement with similar cost, and how will the cost structure evolve in the future? And also if the PNIEC or other scenarios are in line with the 1.5 degrees increase of temperature. So our approach, our modeling technique is based on a model which implements sector coupling and a whole time step. So it's considered electricity, heat, and transport sectors. So the let's say simulation starts by producing the current state of the energy system. So this is the case for the validation of the energy system in 2015, which is our reference here. And then we have also compared the modeling results of CO2 emission with other well-known sources. Our methodology is based on the energy plan software developed by Alba University, which we coupled to a multi-object evolutionary algorithm, which allowed to find the solution in the animation on the right, in which each point is a different scenario 2030 for Italy. So we developed a very high number of different scenarios, and then the optimization algorithm evolves towards the best optimal solutions in terms of CO2 emissions and total annual cost. In order to do that, is important to define some decision variables that are the variables on which the optimization is performed. So the expansion capacity optimization is performed, and these are the variables that we have considered in this study. So renewables, balancing and storage solutions, energy efficiency of buildings, heat pumps, and advanced biomethane for the transport sector. And for all these variables, we have a minimum and a maximum bound through which the optimization can vary the numbers. And the minimum is the current state of the energy system. The maximum is the maximum technical potential for that source. So going very fast, so we have the maximum potential for each of these sources, rooftop PV, which is 120 gigawatt, and all the others numbers for the different decision variables. Then we have also considered the cost for the infrastructure of electric mobility, the industry sector, energy efficiency, the business as usual trends, and of course the decrease of the cost, the investment cost of the main technologies are considered within the model. And these are the final results. So we can see the scenario for the year 2015, and then the scenario for the year 2030, the PNIEC scenario, which is very close to the target, the energy target at 2030. And then we have selected our scenario, which we called Advanced 2030, which has the same cost of the PNIEC scenario, but allowed to reduce further the CO2 emissions. And we have compared these scenarios, and the main characteristics of these advanced case is that we have higher values in terms of renewables, higher values in terms of energy efficiency of buildings, while lower values in terms of advanced biomethane in the transport sector, which has a high cost. So of course, this is the, let's say, the analysis of the results in terms of only values in terms of annual electricity generation, in which of course we can see the higher generation from renewables and mainly from photovoltaics and wind power. The final energy consumption in the different sectors of the energy system and the renewable energy share. The overall cost and their structure, so where we can see that we have a decrease of the cost connected to the fossil fuel and an increase of other costs connected to renewables and energy efficiency of buildings. So this is the reduction in fossil fuel cost. And this highlights a very important part of our study that let's say we can see going from 2015 to 2030 to our scenario that we have a decrease on the fossil fuel cost, so the cost that goes externally, and an increase of the cost that can be a possible domestic value creation on the local economy of the country. And then last point, we try to assess, to inspect if our scenario are in line with the increase of temperature. And so in order to do that, we compare our scenarios with the carbon budget topic. The carbon budget is the finite total amount of CO2 that can be emitted into the atmosphere by human activities while still holding global warming to a desired temperature limit. Of course, this value is for the whole globe, but we estimated the value for our case study for Italy, considering the population. And if we look at the historical values of CO2 emissions and the remaining carbon budget, we understand that we have less than 10 years until the increase of temperature. But if we consider a linear decrease of this carbon budget and we compare it with our scenarios, we can see that even the advanced scenario that seems to us so far from the current state of the energy system is not in line with these to stay within the carbon budget. Or even if we follow the advanced scenario, after 2030, we have a really radical energy transition in order to reach zero, the carbon neutrality. I already explained, let's say, the main key messages of this presentation. As said before, sorry for to be very quick in this presentation, but unfortunately I have another call. If you have any question, please write me. Anyway, you have the full presentation as said before in the chat. So thank you very much for your attention.
Good, Matteo. So you don't have time for just quick question and answer.
Okay, yeah. If you have a very quick question, I can answer.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. It's very nice, and also the message at the end is not very doesn't bring that much comfort, let me say, because it seems that we already fulfilled. Okay, but just a quick explanation about the role of storage. According to what you presented in your scenario, storage is not an option, and this it's quite yes.
Yes.
Strange.
We consider the storage. We consider storage as stationary batteries, which is this one. But of course, let's say the behavior of these Pareto fronts is the following: because of the cost of storage. Let's say the last points on the Pareto front are those with the implementation of storage solutions, while at the beginning of these optimal solutions fronts, we find a solution with a higher value of renewables, but a lot of over generation that it is possible to see also here. And of course, our system considered the already installed power for pumped hydro storage, which is existing in Italy. But in this particular scenario, we don't see the installation of lithium-ion batteries to help the grid, the transmission grid, for example. But yeah, we have considered balancing.
No, so you consider it, but this is not an option in terms of cost benefit.
Yeah, in this particular
an optimal one. Okay. Thank you. So I think you have to leave, but I don't know if anyone has a very quick comment or question.
Maybe I have a very short question for a very short answer to Matteo.
Yep.
Matteo, could you please explain again which kind of costs have you considered? Are there only investment costs, or the cost that the consumer will pay in the bill for supporting the renewables?
The costs are all, let's say, the cost is investment cost, operation and maintenance cost are also included, and of course the cost of the different fuels are evaluated by the system. So the optimization results consider all these aspects within the model.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry again, but I need to leave. But anyway, you can write all the question that you want if you have other.
Thank you much. Thank you very much, Matteo. And Manfred, I think we can go.
Oh, first of all, okay. Okay, can you see it? Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Valeria Szabo. I work for LENERG Energy Agency, which is a regional energy agency in Hungary. And today I would like to share our experience on long-term energy planning at local level in CTREC 50 project. So just really few words about the project itself. We started it 3 years ago, and it will end this year. So we have a lot of experience so far. You can see the 13 partners of this project, which led by National Technical University of Athens. So some words about the background. The project focuses on long-term EU climate and energy targets, promoting carbon neutrality by 2050. So we look out a bit forward than you in prospect. And it also focuses authorities, public authorities, and because they can play an important role in this energy transition process. And therefore, every partner supported local authorities and 10 local authorities and 1 regional authorities in their energy and climate policy planning. So the main objectives of the project was mobilizing and guidancing of public authorities in defining long-term energy policy priorities. And also important part was promoting multi-level governance, which definitely should be improved in Hungary. And partners supported, as I mentioned, local authorities. Not just developing climate and policy plan, but find some financial solution to achieve this plan and have to implement. Okay, so when we are talking about carbon neutrality, we mean that it is 80% carbon dioxide emission reduction at local level. So what we did
in this project already. In an open call, we selected 10 local municipalities. You can see on the slide, and in brackets the number of inhabitants, and you can also see that these are really small municipalities, so we could hear today big technical solutions, but when we go down this size, the energy planning is a little bit different. So, but when we discussed about this energy and the policy plan, they were really happy because they have no other chance to do such work and elaborate these plans. And they have not just no capacity, but knowledge as well. So this plan, this energy and climate policy plans, very similar to CCAP's. It also has a baseline emission inventory. We chose 2011 as a base year, and we focused on public and private sectors and transport, let's say. We didn't focus on industry, first of all, because in these really small municipalities, it's really negligible. And the other reason was that local public authorities has no effect on the industry's energy development, not much. An important part was also the risk and vulnerability analysis, and it contained mitigation and adaptation actions for 2030, 2040, and 2050. And of course, monitoring important in every action plan. So you can see here our results. In this table, you can see the 10 municipalities and the CO2 emission reduction targets by these years and the total budget of the plan. So the main goal was to reach this 80% carbon emission reduction, but honestly, it wasn't easy in some cases. As I mentioned, in public sectors, the general and let's say the most frequent measures, renovation of municipal buildings and installation of different renewable energy sources. In our region, this means photovoltaics installation, biomass boilers, sometimes solar thermal systems, and of course we recommend it if the public lighting system haven't been changed yet, change it to LED lights. But so there was not much potential in these actions considering public sectors, because in the small municipalities, because first of all, they already did some achievements in renovation financed by operational programs, which means 100% grant. So it was easy to do this. And in case of private sector, so the biggest potential are in this private sector, so private houses and block of flats in bigger cities. Also, our recommendation was insulate these buildings, change all the windows and doors, and of course install different type of renewable energy sources. But when we calculated these numbers, we realized that we still couldn't reach this 80% CO2 emission reduction targets. So we had to find out something else, something new. And that's why we planned in every cities a PV park, grounded PV park, a capacity between 0.5 and 2 megawatts. Mainly it was 1 megawatt, but in some cases it was a bit bigger and smaller. And because a grounded PV park cannot be financed by a municipality in these, in the case of the selected municipalities, usually it is achieved by private investors. It wasn't really an option to recommend such a plan via private investors. So we find out that community energy projects would be great in this plan in a form, for example, energy cooperatives. But energy cooperatives currently in Hungary is not so popular, so we don't have so much experience this. But now there is a strong governmental support to find out how can we establish these cooperatives, and in the coming years the regulations and laws will be changed to do this work. And I think the future is the energy cooperatives here, because we can kill two birds with one stone, because we can involve local people, companies, and also public authorities, and at the same time we contribute to the EU and the country's energy goal. So that was one of the main results in our actions, and it was really quick. But if you have any questions, just let me know, and you can see my contact info. Thank you.
Well, now I guess it works, Stefan. Yeah.
I hope so.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, sorry for the technical problems. Hello, and thank you very much for the invitation. I really enjoyed following all the presentations before. And Manfred, I also have to say I really like your philosophical approach to this. And so maybe what I can share today is not so much like technical aspects of energy planning, because I would say that's kind of like you have to know your tools. I think that I would take that as kind of like granted. But I would like to stress the social aspects of it, especially when it comes to the impact of planning. And so my slides, if I can change them, yeah, like here you can see this is a map of our region, like pretty much exactly where you see the sea of municipalities. That's where Munich is. And in our region, we have 94 municipalities. And the map shows different municipalities where we used different funding schemes to draft energy concepts, SECAPs, whatever the municipality wanted, we tried to do, and provided funding through mostly federal sources. And what I find now really interesting is, like, especially when I attend events on like higher level, especially like on state and federal level, sometimes you receive the impression that we all try to create this magic button that we just have to press, and digitalization is going to solve all our problems. And for example, what you can see here is a real map that we use. It's a very small village with 700 inhabitants, and that's just a little part of the village. And our energy planning, you all know how this works, involves the energy demand of this building. And as soon as the green circles overlap, then there's a potential for a local heating distribution and a common heating system. However, we tend to forget that this is only about 10% of making it a real system that works, because in each or under each roof, there's a story, there's a person living there. And in this case, I'm not going to say where it is, it was clear that one house said, I am never going to allow you to pass my building in order to supply my neighbor's house. So these are things that we have to take into consideration when we do energy planning, and it becomes oftentimes very individual. But eventually we made it work, and so because we got the people together. And so my kind of like hypothesis is that it's all about humans and their interests, their needs, their networks, their skills, their stories, their visions. You have to know it at local level. That, for example, in this case, these are our members of the energy consulting boards in all the administrative districts in our region. Each of them has their own motivation why they are part of this, and each of them has their own vision how to get to the goal. But you need to understand those. We had this in the past, that we had energy planning done, like in 2010, 2011. There were external agencies coming in and providing climate protection plans. They provided the service, and then they went to the next municipality and did the same thing. What happened was that, so after the planning was done, everyone was overwhelmed with energy and climate topics. So they said, okay, let's put this in the drawer for a couple of years now, and let's focus on other things because they're also important. And after a couple of years, they pulled out the climate protection plans again, and then nobody really knew, is the data still okay? Actually, how was the data derived and all those kind of things. So what we found out over the years that we have done this energy planning in the region, and we are an organization that was founded by the region, that it really made a difference that we were still available after drafting the plan. So a long-term relationship, and also trust, which is a very human and natural thing, but you need a trust, and you can't just run with the first consultant that you see on the street. So this is, I think, a very important thing. And then how we integrate this in our energy planning now is that it becomes an essential part that, for example, we do a brunch with local chimney sweepers and installers to actually, first of all, inform them about what energy planning means. On the other hand, find out what maybe their prejudices are against renewable energies and all those kind of things. And maybe even, as we heard before, again, how they can even be profiting from renewable energies in the future, instead of actually just trying to stick with what they have done for the last couple of years or decades even. So integrating the key actors is one of the key factors we found out for drafting energy action plans on local level. Also here, what we did is instead of just putting out the energy plan and saying we need this amount of megawatt hours in order to achieve our goals, and here are potential fields where you can put up an open field solar energy power plant, we created, or we developed the potential and then presented it to the landowners first before we actually made it public. And so they felt kind of like brought into the trusted circle, and they could also help us evaluate the various fields and areas where we would suggest potential solar energy power plants. Also, what we try to do is to always find out the stories, find out about failed projects, find out about preferences. As I said earlier, it really doesn't make sense to us to suggest a local energy or local heating system where it is clear that this person is never ever going to provide the ground or the field for this production site. So you have to know this before you actually write it down in an energy action plan. And that's always, I mean, many funding schemes never really supported this idea, and They rather focused on someone sitting on a desk and trying to do all the research with like satellites. But that's where we found out the most valuable information when we were interacting with the people that were living in this region. Deciding on the same numbers, that's a pretty brief description for a 5-year-long project that we did together with scientific partners like the LMU Munich and others like the IFO Institute. We have a input-output model, how actually the economic benefits of the region would work. We have a physical simulation of renewable energy, battery storage, plus energy efficiency, how it all would work together. And we also saw that we will not be able to reach our goals in the region, which is 100% by 2035 renewable energy share. We will not reach those goals if we will not reduce the heating demand, especially, and then on the field, in this field of renewable energy and electricity, we will be able to reach the goals if the federal funding will be provided for this, as it was in the past, but it declined a little bit, or quite drastically. So yeah, that's brief to describe what we've done in this project. And what you can see here again, we found out that it is really important, like even there in this, like we had lots of professors, lots of students putting together this huge amount of data, but eventually it comes down to, well, this is still data, it's not reality most of the time. And so we have to decide if this is the best guess that we're working with. Of course, you can put another number against it, but as soon as you were asked to provide a comment on this number and you did decide not to say anything, then it really helped us a lot to step forward and not always get back to, well, the data is not the right, or I have a different number. And we can actually foster the impact through having a common sense for also the failures of some numbers. But yeah, so that was just a brief description. I'm happy to discuss more of this, and I think it would be really important to to focus and stress way more on the human aspects of energy planning. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. You gave us a good insight on, like Valeria before, also on action plans on the micro level and all the difficulties and connecting all these actions also to programs which are developed top-down. So and also the conflict potential and the synergetic potential. So if there are any questions, please, or keep in mind your questions.
Yeah, maybe we take note of the questions and we try to make a discussion afterwards, I would suggest.
Yes. Okay. In this case, our next guest as a bringing good practice example is Maria Donata Bancher from CasaClima in Bozen, I think. And she will bring us good practice example from the Come Easy project. No?
Yes.
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 Okay, Maria Donata, please.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for your invitation, the opportunity to contribute to this workshop today. I try to share my presentation. Can you see?
Yes.
It's okay.
Not full screen. Yes.
Oh,
now.
sorry. Okay. Yes, my presentation will focus on our experience with the EA and the CAMIS project we are implementing in these years together with this consortium, which brings together all the national managing structures of the European Energy Award. The European Energy Award, for those who don't know, is a quality management and benchmarking and awarding system for local authorities. It is managed at European level by an international non-profit association, which is called European Energy Award, IESBL, and it brings together all national programs that have been developed at national level in the last 25 years. For example, the FINF program in Austria or the Energiestadt in Switzerland, Citergy in France, and most recent also the Klimagemeinde, CasaClima in Italy. The main aim of the EEA is to support local authorities in establishing in the interdisciplinary planning approaches and implementing effective sustainable policy measures following a so-called bottom-up approach. That means that municipalities that are committed to the EEA are supported by a qualified advisor, and they shall commit to implement and develop local action in all relevant areas of competence. These areas are established in development and spatial planning strategy, municipal buildings and facilities, mobility, supply and disposal, internal organization, and communication and cooperation. The EEA core tool or instrument is the so-called catalog of measure. It is a comprehensive set of international but also nationally adapted and regional adapted measures that can be used not only to elaborate the action plan but also to assess the results and also to assess therefore the performance in these areas. Actually, more than 1,600 cities and communities are participating to the EEA, involving more than 65 million of European citizens. We have in the program large municipalities, large cities, as Lyon Metropolis in France, but also small villages like Senedes, which is the smallest, with not more than 156 inhabitants in Switzerland. In Italy, we introduced the EEA in 2015 when we launched the Klimagemeinde Comune Klima program as a voluntary program to push municipalities in implementing concrete measures in the field of energy and climate policies, and as it concerns the municipalities in South Tyrol to contribute more actively to the energy and climate targets that were set by the Klimaland Strategy 2050. Actually, 26 municipalities are participating, and one is awarded gold. That means the highest award, and 12 have reached the EEA Comune Klima Silver. What is interesting to know is that 90% of the municipality reached the first step, that is the Comune Klima Bronze, in the first 2 years, and 40% of the municipalities were awarded silver after the first external audit. Going back to the European level, now we are engaged and we are working together with all the national managing structures of the EEA in this new project, which is called CAMISI. And as is said by the acronym CAMISI, the main goal is to synchronize the EEA process with the Covenant of Mayors. That means to find out solution and to develop also support tools in order to facilitate municipalities in reaching the EU 2030 and 2050 targets. In addition to the Covenant of Mayors, other important initiatives and international standards like the Smart Cities Initiative or the ISO Standard 50001 and ISO Standard 37120 have been analyzed in order to identify these potential cross-fertilization benefits and synergies with the EEA. Based on these results, we have developed an open support package for municipality, and we have tested it in 18 ambassador cities. The harmonization of the EA process and the new tools that have been developed aim to facilitate, from one side, engagement of local authorities in different initiatives, and also their daily operational works. And they will better support municipalities in the elaboration of their SECAPs and harmonize the local policies to national and EU strategies. Some of the tools that have been developed will also facilitate the capacity building and the benchmarking among cities and communities. Here you have an overview of the tools developed during the project. They can be divided into three main groups. That is the calculation tools, mitigation calculator, and the emission path tool, which aim is to elaborate emission inventories, reduction paths, and mitigation impacts. On the other side, we have the benchmarking and knowledge sharing tools like the KPIs, the best practice library, and the guidelines for stakeholders engagement. And then we have other tools which are called facilitator in order to ease the report to different initiatives. And these are the SECAP creator, the ISO facilitator, and the adaptation tool. The first tool I want briefly to present is the emission path tool. It is tools made up of three interrelated tools, that is the BEMA, or emission inventory tool, the scenario calculator, and the EER path, that means emission, energy and emission reduction path assessment tool. The first one, BEMA, enables to collect all the energy consumption and energy supply data and the calculation of the greenhouse gas emissions of the municipalities in a standardized way. Using then the scenario calculator, the municipality can define future scenarios in terms of energy consumption, in terms of emission, but also in terms of population, that can be based on different forecasts and assumptions, and can therefore identify the appropriate local reduction targets and path. All the data and all the results coming from these two tools are then used and enter in the last tool, which is the EER path, in order to visualize the primary reduction path that has been identified by the municipality and to assess its effectiveness and its ambition towards regional, national, and EU targets. The EER path means the last tool processes all this data, displays three different charts, which are the population path, the consumption path, and the emission path. And the municipality's reduction path is displayed together with the regional, national, and European ones to allow this comparison. Another tool which is strictly related to the EPT is the mitigation calculator. As the word said, mitigation calculator. It is aimed to select or to support municipalities in selecting appropriate mitigation measure during the planning phase by estimating their impacts, both in terms of energy and CO2 savings, in terms of renewable energy production, or in terms of investment cost. That means that the rough estimation of impacts is based on all the data that are entered in the BEI or the MAI of the municipality, and also on typical energy and CO2 savings and country-specific costs that are entered in background by the CAMESE partners for each selected measures. Actually, we have a set of over 60 measures in different sectors, in 9 sectors altogether, that are actually available. And for each of these measures, the user, once entered the total quantity and the quantity affected, can have automatically an estimation of the annual energy savings, annual CO2 emission savings, and total investment costs. This means that with the use of this mitigation calculator, we can feed the APT and especially the scenario calculator to elaborate the appropriate reduction path for the municipality. In order to assess the performance of cities and communities in different fields of action, not only energy or emission, a set of 39 KPIs has been defined during the project, and out of these, 11 have been set as mandatory KPIs for all participating municipalities. The approach is an holistic approach. That means we are covering different areas of the municipalities' work. That means strategy and planning, energy and climate, public authorities and governance, mobility, but also prosperity. The set is aligned with other KPI sets that are used at European but also international level. That means there is a strict relation, for example, with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and Indicators. And there is the possibility for municipality to use, to make these KPIs available and public on the CAMISE website in order to allow other local authorities to have a view and to use these for benchmarking. The last tool to present is the best practice library. In this case, we want to collect successful experience at local level from interested municipality in order to foster replication and inspiration in other municipalities around in Europe, but also outside Europe. And until now, we have the possibility to all municipalities, all interested municipalities have the possibility to publish it and to make them available on our website. All the tools have been tested in 18 ambassador cities, which are spread in 7 different European countries: Austria, France, Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, Romania, and Switzerland. And actually, further 70 municipalities are involved in the rollout phase. All the municipalities participating to the project have developed a SafeCap using with the support of these tools. Moreover, more than 150 advisors have been trained to use the tools and to support the rollout of municipalities in the development of other SafeCaps. On the CAMISE webpage that I have reported here, our website, www.camise.eu, you can find all the information to access this open platform and all the CAMISE tools, but you can also find materials, informational materials for municipalities, and a collection of webinars and short video appeals with ambassador cities. That's all for my side. Thank you very much for your attention, and I stay available for further questions.
Thank you very much, Maria Donata. Once more, we had a very interesting contribution on how to link the bottom-up approaches and the top-down approaches regarding energy planning. And I think for making real progress in energy transition and mitigating climate change, this is one more chain link, let's call it that, one more chain link in the process, because we'll heavily have to rely on benchmarking and connect all these benchmarks from macro level to micro level. So thank you for your interesting contribution. And in this case, I will open now the question and answer session. I hope I think there are some questions to our participants, our presenters.
I can ask some. I noted some question, one for Valeria about okay, so if I get it right, main conclusion of your work was that with these very small municipalities, if you want to reach this carbon neutrality standards and targets, you have to go for the installation of renewables plant, bigger renewable plants. And what about the topic of the acceptance of renewables, which was also touched by Manfred, and he starting a presentation? Is this an issue in your country? I mean, to have a larger plant installed on the ground on green fields, or have you considered this in your work?
Okay, so in Hungary, I think there is no problem to install such a big plant. Of course, nobody likes to do it in a green field, and but maybe local governments have land where they can these plants, and if there is no option, I think we have to make it happen somehow. To just add something else, the biggest difficulties are in lack of knowledge in these small municipalities, because they have so energy, it's not the priority for them really, so they are struggling for surviving. And I think it's also important to deal with these really small municipalities, because they have no other options if we handle this problem only. So I think these bigger plants can be possible.
Yeah.
No problem.
I can
but of
say,
course, yes, some changing in regulation is needed.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. And I think for Italy it could be an issue in a way, but okay, Manfred, can I also make a question to Stefan? Can I? I don't want to speak just myself, but I appreciated all the pictures you put with a lot of people. It seems very weird nowadays. So all together, hopefully we will get back to that place soon. No, okay. Maybe I go back to a very short discussion we had. Maybe we put this. We can put this on the ground if we can have contribution also, or comments maybe from Manfred or from whoever. So the question about the importance of the social aspects in the planning led me to this question that you raised about how to evaluate the impact of the planning. You know, when it's very complicated question when you see that you have different municipalities, some with planning and some with not, who haven't planned anything in energy, and how do you can measure this the impact of the planning? Is this useful, and to what extent, and how to yes, argue with someone who says that this is not important? So how can we raise importance? And maybe one answer can be in your presentation the role of people and their involvement. Maybe this could be a clear answer, because numbers, they are not able to describe this. But I would like to know if any in the fields they have any experience in the evaluation of the impact of planning and how to give added value to this. Maybe you can formulate better my remark, let me say. But
yeah, maybe something that I can share, because we are now part of another scientific project, and I am part of the group that deals with impact, like what is impact exactly, and all those kind of things. And I found it really interesting. We had a scientist from the University in Berlin, and she is like the expert on impact science and research. And she said, all you can do is create a impact potential during energy planning or any other publicly funded projects. And then it is very much up to where the public attention is at the moment. Like, for example, right now, the newspapers are full with everything else, or like one thing. But now, of course, it's really hard to get through with your information, get through with your measures. On the other hand, so that would say that it's only luck if it takes off, right? But I think that's only like half of the story. Maybe we should measure how many people we, as you said before, how many people we involve in the planning process already. And that's something I would really criticize on like federal or like state level in Germany, that especially this aspect is not funded or not covered by the public funding. And sometimes municipalities have to be convinced to actually engage in this field. And so I would say like the impact, like you will not be able to measure the impact right away. But as we see it now, if you're there for a long time, we have one municipality, for example, they started out 8 years ago, and we put together a plan that ended 2020 because they said, we know 2035 is our goal, but we want to do something until 2020, and then we do another plan. And for example, they said, well, they are done. They pretty much achieved what they were able to do until 2020. So that kind of like creates the impression, at least, that we have an impact there. But it's not the whole region. It's just a small village that did that. And it was like intensive care over 8 years. You know what I mean? Like we stuck with them, although we didn't have like a contract with them anymore, although they didn't engage because they're too small, for example, for the European Energy Award. That's like a way too big tool for them to use. And so we just took them by the hand all the way through. But yeah, I'm interested to hear that, because I would like to hear the discussion about this, because I think in this case, it is not scalable. You need an expert that goes to this one municipality. You also need this expert to go to the second municipality. And as soon as you have a couple of municipalities, you need more than one expert. And that's kind of like my point that I want to put out there. We need more people on the ground. It doesn't really solve the problem to always focus on more efficient planning and digitalization and use satellites. We need people on the ground that actually transport it, just like with the EEA. You need the advisors to go out there to the municipalities and explain the tool that is there. Yeah, but I'm happy to hear what the others think about this.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to bring a contribution in this discussion.
Yes, of course. This is a very important fact to have in the action plans also priorities which are not technical, which have no technical focus. We had it in priority development in Prospect 2030. Maybe it's inaccurate now. we should have named it different. We have priorities which we called supportive. These are measures which have no technical focus, but more an educational focus and a focus on communication and information. Now, 1 year later, I would call them catalyzing factors. So using instruments like brands, business instruments, brands involving stakeholders in business, in tourism, in industry, having brands, having also competitions as just a maybe silly but effective example, going to work by bike, make a competition. You have your fitness tracker and your cell phone, and you participate in a competition. So to have catalyzing factors in unfolding your activities. I think, and you are right, Stefan, that from the overarching level, from the macro level, there is put focus on it. There is put focus on it, but on urban level, not on rural level. This is something that is covered when I think that the European Commission is taking care of the rural spaces really and touchable since 3 or 4 years with the introduction of digitalization, smart villages, and so on. Yeah, here you can reach people. Yeah, so you need on the overarching level. There needs to be a focus too on catalyzing priorities. And these priorities can come from benchmarking. Benchmarking is a very important instrument for transition planning and for reaching acceptance. And acceptance is the core point for transition, because otherwise if we speed really up and try to catch up also the COVID gap, this could be perceived by people as some sort of authoritarian approach, and this will surely create resistance and lessen acceptance. So in our case, for example, we have as a catalyzing or supportive priority. It's a priority. It's a catalyzing priority. Having programs with schools, because schools are involving, students are also involving their parents. So we reach the families, we reach the ordinary man and woman. We have a program for branding, for involving commerce and industry and tourism and so on, and various other things. Information on phasing out from things for caring for green. For gardening and so on, electricity. Yeah, so a competition, you can win an electrical chainsaw. I don't know. Yeah, this is very important, catalyzing the process.
Yep, maybe if I can just quickly reply, because I think capacity, it means for me, we need people on the ground being able to transport all the great instruments that are out there. That's the one thing. And then on the other hand, as you say, like supplement or catalyst activities, we really have to make local and regional and also state and national level aware that this costs a lot of money. We are so happy to have like one newspaper ad. We are so happy to have one radio ad maybe a year. We're so happy to have one like poster somewhere in a public space. why do you decide to buy a BMW X9 or X20? I don't know where they are at right now, but it is because everywhere you go to the dentist, you see it on the table, you go, you drive your car, you hear it on the radio. They spend a lot of money, and I come from like marketing. And we really have to make our decision makers aware that those catalyst activities, as you say, they cost a lot of money. And we are like tiny dwarfs compared to all the competition about information out there. So I really want to strengthen this aspect, yeah.
Yeah. Good point.
Okay, any other question, please? Maybe I can contribute once more with an example of our
but let's take just account of the timing and maybe.
Oh, yes.
But okay, please.
Yeah. Stressing once more the subsidiary effect, which is very often missing, and the concept of climate and energy model region, for example, requires a manager. The manager who is in continuous touch with the stakeholders, not only mayors, but also stakeholders in economy, stakeholders in education, and so on. So these are people on the ground, yeah, acting on the ground. The one facilitates it easier, another it's also a personal thing. In our case, it's working pretty good, and this is an important chain link also in benchmarking. Yeah, that's what I wanted to contribute finally. Have people in place, yeah, and having also in the overall concept of a program, providing place and foreseeing space for this kind of actors who are really doing the legwork then for energy transition. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, please? So
just something from our experience about the stakeholders engagement. We have seen that municipalities, for example, are very interested in this field, but they lack of methodologies and of know how to engage in the proper way all those stakeholders, and therefore there is the need to support them also in this kind of activities because they lack of know-how in this field.
okay, so I think we have had a lot of information, a lot of very interesting, good practice examples in all over Europe. And I want to thank all the presenters and all the participants for their contributions and for their attention.